Storm have been building for quite some time.
Welcome to our show.
Welcome to our show. My name is Annie Mack.
And I'm Vangie Castro, and we are
2POC2QUEERS. So good to be back.
Yes.
After enjoying the really beautiful day, it's really fun to come in and be able to have a great conversation. And hopefully y'all are tuning in at some point. You're able to watch the podcast and listen to the podcast, and make sure that you like and subscribe. Vangie can share all the spaces and places that you can find us, because you do such a good job with that. So
thank you. Yes. If you like what we're doing, smash the like button, subscribe to us.
You just
share us with your friends. Smash.
I know. I look at that hat and I'm like, that is a brazen hat, and I'm here for it. You're like, I am the mayor of Smashville. Welcome.
So the weather has been wonderful here in our little Midwestern town.
Yeah.
It's surprisingly it is 80 degrees, and you can see that the clothing change. Typically in the winter, I usually wear flannels, and when the weather gets nicer, I'm the short sleeves buttoned up type.
And I'm a little bit more on the gothic side. I wear a lot of grays, a lot of blacks.
You're wearing
and
blue.
So today I'm wearing blue to welcome in spring. And what's the date today?
It's 11th.
The 11th. So
it's April 11th.
April 11th. And so we do run this on Thursdays, but just for those of you who are doing the math. And that is our spring. Spring technically is supposed to start like in March.
Yep, March 20th, typically around that time.
So we're actually pretty close.
And I look at spring as a time of renewal and rejuvenation and clearing of the way of new things. And so I know...
mating.
And
mating.
Which brings us back to the theme of today's show. Annie wanted us to go have a deeper dive in midlife queer dating, because we actually really didn't touch upon what it's like to be BIPOC queer women identified seeking sapphic love.
Or in sapphic love,
or already in sapphic love,
like
situations.
Immersed in the love so deeply,
because
that it is like a warm covering of sapphic love that feels good.
Where are we going with that?
What?
In the last show, Annie Mac had asked me if I had a type, and I do not like to admit. But I do seem to have a type. And that type looks like liberal white women.
Yes. Right. With turtlenecks.
Well, most likely cardigans.
And I'm with her.
No, they don't wear turtlenecks, because you want to snuggle up.
Oh,
you got little neck
sure
kisses.
About that?
Gotta give little neck shoulder kisses.
Little necks and shoulders and turtlenecks. No, there's a lot of turtlenecks in your dating history.
Is there?
I think so.
I feel like that.
Yeah.
Annie we've been friends for a while, so I've dated a few people while we've known each other.
Yeah. I love that. I love that we've known each other for that long. So you wouldn't guess it. You wouldn't guess how old this one really is.
Doesn't it look? I look the type that I'd be more of a long-term, long hauler.
Right. That sounds so attractive. I hope people are jumping to be. No, you. I know you, and you are a very dedicated partner. You are in serious. You're not a person that jumps around a lot. You do like to be in intentional relationships.
When I'm in relationships, I'm in relationships. I am loyal to a fault sometimes. But I try to be honest and upfront with the people that I date, because I think, and as we talked about in our prior episode, is if I feel that the relationship is no longer serving us, as heartbreaking as it would feel to separate, it's always, I think, better to deal with a heartbreak and move on than it is to continually be in a harmful, toxic relationship, trying to make it work, but it doesn't get any better. And sometimes it even gets worse.
And that's if you realize that it's actually toxic. For a lot of individuals, there is a belief, and I think I fell into that for a while as well, when I was younger, especially, that that's just the way relationships are. Like, if you don't understand or have discernment, or you haven't learned what's supposed to feel right and be a healthy practice and be able to give voice to certain things, and it's like you don't know. So you just keep perpetuating. You say, oh yeah, this is normal.
Well, culturally, I am Filipino. Ethnically, I'm Filipino. And in my culture, we, in the Philippines and Uganda are the two countries that divorce is illegal, which can be very problematic, especially in relationships and marriages where they can be abusive, or that type of situation can nurture abusive situations because you can't leave, right? There's no options to be able to get out of a marriage.
And it's also a belief where the family steps in to actually redirect you. If you do talk about wanting to leave, or you're like, this isn't working, we're running into these problems, or I'm being abused, and the family and the community is kind of supportive and like, nope.
So growing up, my mom and dad were together until my dad passed away. And so when I was growing up, I believe that you met someone, you married them, and you stayed with them until death. That's what you did, and you were loyal and monogamous. I was crushed when I found out when I was 13 that my dad had an affair and had another family that he was taking care of.
He had like a whole ass family.
Yes.
I just really wanted to use. Just forgive me.
You can only imagine can really flip the paradigm of what your ideal relationships are. And my mom and dad's marriage, I thought, was idealistic or idyllic, and then it wasn't. And so that can really harm how you move forward when it comes into relationships. And so a lot of my therapy was around the sins of my father and the suffering of my mother, because my mother did know about my dad cheating, unfortunately. However, because of our cultural upbringing, she felt that she had no way to leave. She couldn't. And I talked to her and I asked her, I was like, why didn't you leave dad when you found out? She's like, I had 4 kids.
Right. That I had to provide
3
for.
kids. She had 3 kids.
Oh my word.
3 kids.
Where's
There's 4 of us. There's 4 of us.
Baby, you need to go back to therapy, because you didn't blocked out whole family members.
There's 4 of us. So I have 3 siblings and myself, so that makes 4.
Okay.
So she's like,
we have work to do.
I have 4 kids to raise. How am I supposed to do that? In a foreign country, right? And when we were here in the United States, and I found this out. So yes, there's a lot of trauma that comes with that, and so it can dictate a lot about how you navigate your romantic relationships moving forward. On top of being an immigrant coming to the United States and not seeing yourself in the media, in advertising, and in movies, in novels and books, and that the ideal person that you're supposed to fall in love with is an all-American white person, and that I did not look like an all-American white person. However, I fell in love with some.
But you fell in love with some because your heart was open, and you believe in cultures appreciating and loving each other, and it's what.
Why are you making this out to be way
You did
more?
what you had to do. No, I'm just kidding. And it's okay to love them.
Like, when that's all you see, and that's what you're supposed to desire, are white women. That's where you start to. That's where your heart goes. Right?
Well, for you, I mean, my experience is very different. Yeah.
And I would sometimes jokingly say to my partners, my white female partners, that I was dating my colonizer, and obviously that did not go well. That did not go over well.
What? That doesn't get your motor running?
I say that jokingly, but I think what people don't understand is that white folks, all white people are racist because they are part of a racist part of the racist institution that we currently live in, which is the United States. And so we have been conditioned that for a really, really long time, that whiteness was the desired, preferable beauty standard.
Once again, I have a very different experience. I will say that I think when it comes to queerness, if we take in the cultural aspect, if we're talking about like it was a problem for your mother to leave this marriage because of the social norm and the stigma that comes along with that, I can't imagine how being a queer brown person in that culture and community as well. So to me, linking up with white women may not have been like they're the most ideal, but the most accepting, possibly. Was there safety in that connection? Mm-hmm. I'm sure there was. Liberal white women, there's something about feeling safe, feeling appreciated, possibly. I can't speak for your experience, but I'm just thinking of like...
No, my dad was a bigot.
Okay, and there's that. And so like, what do you
really actually love my father? We had a very complicated relationship. Republican.
Wow.
Believed that
that's deep.
We were better than Black folks and Mexicans.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you go to work and you. Yeah, don't live off the government. You make dreams happen. You're the American dream. Yeah,
we came to this country the right way.
Right. Yeah.
And so my dad saw himself to be better than other people of color. He would never like say that. I don't think people would have ever thought that about him. Mm-hmm. But growing up and now looking back, I just remember all the things he would say. And the feeling that I had knowing if I brought somebody who was Black or Mexican as a partner, that he would be really not happy about it.
Right, yeah. Right. And so he could accept that you were gay, queer, but when you start to, like that was his offering. But
he was not okay with me being queer.
He wasn't okay with it, but the thing was, okay, if you're going to bring home this woman, she can at least fit this ideal.
Yes, it was more, interestingly enough, the fact that my partners were white women seemed to be okay with my father. Like bringing white women home, he was fine with that. Like we just didn't talk about it.
Right.
But he accepted that they were people that were part of my life.
Right. That's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot.
Mm-hmm. That's a lot of burden to carry. That's a lot of therapy I had to go through.
Right. And so how do you think that has dictated, like once you became incredibly independent, let's say you didn't care about what he thought and you didn't care about, because we always want to make our parents happy, right? Mm-hmm. And I don't think we even consciously realize the things that we do to appease them or to try to stay in their favor. And then you step back and you think, oh, I've been dating these white women who wear turtlenecks, and what am I perpetuating? Like,
so I was thinking about this woman that I had dated 20 years ago, a white woman, And when I lived in California, and lovely, lovely woman. I believe in right person, wrong time.
Right.
Like I was not.
I feel that.
She was the right person for me. I was not the right person for her. But if we had met later on in my life, I think that we would have worked out.
Right.
And I'm not saying like she's the one that got away, but when I think about her and I think about who I was in that time, and there was a lot think about me 20 years ago. Like I was a mess. Like I'm in my 20s and trying to still figure out who I am as a person, what my my role in the world is. It's just starting to come into the liberation, my own personal liberation and decolonization, and understanding that me as a brown person, because growing up, of course, with my dad who's Republican, thinking that like we're just as good as white people.
And that being the standard.
Yeah.
That being the actual
I did not
standard.
realize as I'm growing up, no, I am not white, I am brown. And right. I am going to be treated a certain way. And I have been treated a certain way. And I have to understand that this is going to dictate how I am going to live the rest of my life and what choices I'm going to make for the rest of my life if I want to thrive, if I want to succeed, if I want to do well. I have to know that there is a system that is built for me to fail.
Right.
And knowing that and being in college and realizing like, yes, we're not going to educate people to know how to tear down a system that basically oppresses them. We're going to teach people on how to be good workers and how to be subservient and how to continue to conform to capitalistic ideals and be a consumer. That's what we go to school for, to learn. And that's why they don't want us to learn critical race theory, because if you do learn your real history, you will understand basically what I've just said, is that that people, white men specifically, who owned property, set up a system so they would succeed and everybody else would fail. And that is unfortunate. And this is what this is the legacy that we continue to live with and that we have to continue to fight against, even though we are excellent. And
it's the idea of status. It's the idea of like, what does status look like to me? The car that I drive, the status of, who's on my arm.
Yep.
I have a white woman.
Who am I dating?
Who am I dating? I have a white woman. Here's a representation of status and power, things of that nature. And so it plays into a lot of different dysfunctions of society. And the irony is that it starts at home. It starts in our developmental environment of what do we see, even if you know that it's not right, but it's the practice, it's the culture of getting ahead or the culture of assimilation, and so it's just a practice. Like I'm sure you're attracted to women from all cultures, Filipino women, right?
Yes.
But it was easier probably
when I grew up in California. It's very diverse.
Very diverse.
Lots of beautiful Black and brown folks that I was friends with, that I dated. And yes. However, even though that there was a larger pool of beautiful Black and brown women, that indigenous women I could date, I leaned more towards white liberal women.
But don't you think they leaned towards you too? Like, don't you think there was
some leaning towards me too? And that's an interesting thing, because when I think about, there were some women that white women that liked dating people of color. Right. And then there were women where I was the only person of color they had ever dated. Right. So I never... I wouldn't typically break down the psychology behind why I dated a certain person, right?
Right.
Because you want it to be about feelings and love and romance. However, trauma does play a role in romantic attraction sometimes.
Right.
So when you are raised in a chaotic environment where love feels like it's all about sacrifice, it's all about making sure that you do everything that you can to let this person know that you will hold them down and be their ride or die, or all like, I mean, bury bodies for them.
Oof, yeah. Yeah.
Or stay in a relationship with them after they've cheated on you and had a whole other family.
A whole other family. That whole ass.
So there's this like cycle that I'm trying to break, trying to break my dad's sins. And is that my job? Is that my work? The answer would be no. However, the effects of what happened to me growing up does, I don't want to admit, like, it shapes the way that I love. I guess that's the best way that I can explain it.
Right. That's good. Thank you for sharing that and having, transparency. And that's a really hard thing to process and give voice to. Part of the decolonizing is recognizing the root of how we navigate, in our lives. How, what's our pattern? What have we been doing, in our navigation of that? And so understanding that a lot of it started at home,
right.
and how problematic that's been. And even like just unconsciously doing problematic shit or having these ideas or views. And like for me, I didn't know when I was younger. I grew up in Minneapolis. I saw a lot of queerness, but I didn't know that I personally could be gay.
Right.
Like it wasn't like a choice. I didn't feel like I had a choice. So I came into my queerness later on in life. And I grew up in a really beautiful Black community, brown community. I know who I am. I feel really good about that. What it was when I did step into my being ready to date women, I was located here in Rochester. And so what I struggled with was just even meeting out individuals, actually meeting out women. That was a problem. I didn't, I wasn't, it was just like, okay, where
seems to be a thing.
Where's
here
the queer
in
women?
Our sleepy little Midwestern town.
So
late in life lesbians.
Well, late in life in the sense that, probably like when I was about 20. What am I? 44. So when I was like 26, 20. Yeah, so later in life, but not like so far gone.
I'm talking about 30s and 40s.
Right. So
late 20s. I came out when I was 16, but really when I was 13, I had a pretty strong inkling that I was gay. Maybe even when I was younger than that, I probably knew I was different.
Right.
But I was raised heterosexual, like most kids.
Went to prom with your date, with your guy date. I think for me, I had such a respect and a desire to be connected to women, not necessarily like in a sexual way, but just like a lot of admiration, like a lot of I loved some of my teachers, and I loved, women that I just thought were just, so beautiful, and a lot of Afrocentric women when I was growing up who just looked like, goddesses to me, because I grew up in that neighborhood where there was such a strong pride in culture, Black culture. And, so it was really beautiful to see that. And those are the women, my mother, it just appreciating her, but then realizing I've always just had a connection to women. And then as I got older, realizing that, maybe some of that is, an attraction. But initially it just started off I was always looking for ways to be empowered by looking to other women whom I thought were empowered.
Right.
Even though I didn't feel like that.
Right.
I would see these women who were just so confident, and they were and I would think, how do they do that? And so just the respect, and my favorite writers, my favorite movies, a lot of them just like strong female characters, unapologetic, or survivors, things of that nature. So so when I stepped into my queer journey, it had nothing to do with race. It had nothing to do with my culture. That is not, for, in a weird way, I didn't lead with that. Not that I downplayed it or anything, but it was just like this openness of like, I'm meeting another gay woman. And that in itself was such a big deal to me, that I wasn't concerned about.
Race never played a part.
It was the attraction. It was actually a part of the attraction and the dance. I think usually more so for white women with me than vice versa. To me, it's like I appreciate white women, I understand, but like my ideal or my belief is not like, oh, you know, white women hold that. It's like, no, I love women and I appreciate women, but it's like, I realize like a lot of white women like me, and they like, and it's like, what is that about?
Why would white women not like?
Well, I know, but it's just like, what is it all about? But then that's once again the community. That's the small kind of pool, you know. But then I go
the shallow
pool. But I go,
we swim around.
But I go to other places where there's a reflection of me, and there's more, you know, Black queer women. More, it's like, oh,
when you go up to Minneapolis,
right. So
the queer community is much larger, much more diverse in more urban areas.
So there was never like a, you know, but I'm incredibly. It is a journey to be in intimacy with a white woman because of so many various things associated with white women. And so as a Black woman, I didn't realize, I think it's something I downplayed, how problematic and how harmful having white female partners has been and can be when you are with a white partner who's not doing their work of anti-racism and has lack of self-awareness to the point where they're actually willing to do the work associated with them. Not just say, oh, I know every once in a while I'll say something silly, blah, 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 but actually understanding like the role that white women have played historically in you know, in the relationship and dynamic with Black individuals, Black men, Black women. You know, there's a lot there. There's a lot to unpack.
White women tears.
Like
they
power.
They come for you.
The power. And so how do you...
power in white women tears.
With my own partner, you know, it's like we navigate, you know, she is a white woman. She is an anti-racist. She's an abolitionist. So she's doing work on a level that is really admirable and inspiring, and she still says, I will always be a racist, anti-racist. I will always have to check myself, do my work, realize that I am problematic. My tears have caused, you know, harm to community, various things associated, like white supremacy is in my DNA. So the work that she puts into actually realizing that and then doing the work associated with that and releasing it and not being problematic, being able to serve community, you know, is pretty deep. Yeah.
And Mack and I had talked about the difference between dating women of color and white women, and that like even as us as friends, we understand each other because we can talk about experiences that feel similar based on you know, some moments of discrimination or just being queer people of color, and how that can impact you and how you see yourself or how you move through the world. When you're dating someone who is white and you can't identify with that, they might say, well, you know, as a woman, I know what it's like to feel oppressed. And sure, okay, yes, sexism is real. The patriarchy sucks. Let's smash it. However, when you have that added layer, the intersectionality of queerness and race, then you have multiple obstacles that we are trying to overcome when it comes to making real connections, trying to find vulnerability with each other, trying to get to that point of intimacy where you can be real and honest. And I think what I have discovered with my white partners is that I never felt I could be 100% vulnerable and honest with them and ask for what I need.
Right.
Because I don't think that I ever felt, just in life in general, that I can ask white people what I need.
Right.
Without feeling like I owed them something or that I was weak. Because growing up, I was taught that if you showed emotions, then you were showing weakness, and people can take advantage of that. I had to overcome many years to overcome that, because I don't think kindness, I don't think vulnerability is weak.
No.
It just took me like 45 years to figure that out.
So you're saying that when, like, no matter what you had experienced with your partners, your white, female partners, no matter the things that you face together, no matter like all these things that bring you closer, the joy that you have, the intimacy only goes so far.
Yeah. So for example, I was talking about this woman that I dated 20 years ago, and she was really pivotal in helping me grow as a person, because she said something to me. She's probably one of the few women that was really like open and honest with me, with her own feelings and her own vulnerability, because she wanted me to show up. Right. She wanted me to show up the same way. And she said to me she wasn't sure, like sometimes I would be there. Like I would be there, like connecting. And she felt like she could feel the warmth, she could feel the love. But then at times she could feel that I would disappear. Like I would just like be somewhere else.
Right.
And even though I was there present, like emotionally, I had like gone back inside of myself, because most likely I felt fear of like, that she was going to hurt me. Basically, that if I fell too far in love with her, most likely she would break my heart.
Right. In the form of, like, was it in the form of like racial gaslighting? Like if something were to happen to you and you were to say, hey, or just not even recognizing.
I wasn't there yet at that time in my life. I did not, what I knew then.
She just had power.
No. And this might have something to do with us as Black and brown people. I didn't feel like it was good enough for her.
Oh, right.
So in a way, and I wasn't. not because of I was young. I didn't have my life together. I didn't know what I was doing with my life. I didn't even know like what I thought, what kind of relationship I wanted to be in. She wanted to be in a relationship. She asked if we could be girlfriends. I told her I needed to think about it.
How young? Like, give me the
28.
Age. And how old was she?
She was 5 years older.
Okay.
So she was in her 30s. She was in her 30s. I was
so she was ready. She was ready.
She was ready.
Okay.
She was ready. She was ready to be in a long-term relationship. She was ready to find a life partner, and she was hoping that I would be this life partner. And when I said, let me think about it, I think that let her know that I was not ready.
Right.
And that I was not going to be that person that she thought that we could build a life together with. And when I think about how just honest she was when it came to her own feelings, it helped me, one, to look at myself and look at my own feelings. And I was a little bitter because I was like young and stupid, and it was like, oh, if she's not going to love me for who I am now, then she's not going to like ever love me. And that's not true. I was a work in progress.
So she's the one that got away.
She's not she's not the one that got away, because it was just not our time.
Right. Okay.
It was our time. in that moment, it was our time for each other, and it helped me grow as a person. And then the next person that I was in a relationship with, that really helped ground me to be a better partner for my next person that I was actually with for a really long time. We were together for over 7 years, and we actually got engaged. So to say that even though the relationship did not go the way that I expected or hoped, I learned a lot from it. Like, she was, I mean, we still know each other on Facebook. I don't know if we'd consider each other friends. I mean, if maybe we don't talk on the regular, but I think that we could still consider each other friends.
Right. And I mean, you're in a place now where you're able to take, I don't even know if it's accountability, unless you were doing some like weird shit, or you were just being young.
I was young. I sabotaged it. I basically I did all the things to make her think that I was not the right fit. I didn't know that that's what I was doing, because I knew, that I didn't think I was good enough for her. Even though on the surface, I made it seem like I was all that in a bag of chips.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. That's a lot. I'm learning a lot tonight. I'm just like, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's a lot. That's a lot.
Well, yeah. So when I always tell people that I haven't been in many significant relationships, and it's not a lot.
I think it's really, great to recognize that, because as you move forward, you know exactly what's expected, you know what to do. I still think, being in your early is still kind of young in a sense of like the maturity that it really takes to partner up, and what that means, like financially, being financially intimate, being emotionally, all the things. And if we're in these relationships that we say like we love our people and we want to grow together, but yet we're not able to share certain aspects because we're afraid of being hurt, or that we're not good enough, or that it's going to be used against us, and it's a power that's used against us. If I am going out in the world as a Black queer woman and I am taking hits left and right from white people, situations, jobs, everywhere I go, I'm being perceived a certain way. No one even takes the time to know me. It's like to come home and be with someone who kind of holds the same space, and like they're not doing work. So they really can't have,
So I always say, like, I'm looking for a soft place to land.
Yeah.
And if I feel like my partner is unsafe, right, emotionally and psychologically unsafe, that's not a soft place to land. That's going to be someplace that I'm going to feel anxious, and that most likely unsafe, and probably not a good fit for me. And that can happen a lot when I'm dating white women, because I think they don't see themselves as being problematic, because obviously liberal white women believe that they are not those people, that they are not racist.
Yeah.
And so because
like, I voted for Obama and Hillary.
And Joe Biden, who had Kamala Harris.
Right.
However, I lost my point, but it was a good point. Anyway,
I felt that it was good too. I was like, let me.
I'm gonna jump in there and
distract.
Okay, we go back to safe places.
Soft places, safe places.
Soft place to land, right? And in a safe, a safe harbor. And when you don't feel like that person that you go home to is safe, then what are you going to do, right? And you're not going to be there. You're not going to go home.
And they resemble the problematic shit that you have to deal with, and that goes for being, with the white man. Like if you're in, I mean, we're sticking to what we're sticking to, but even like being with individuals who uphold an active dynamic.
Oh yeah, the liberal white women who feel that they are not problematic because they are not racist, because they're not those people.
Right.
However,
and
that
look
they
at my
are,
girlfriend.
When you had mentioned you can't fuck your way out of racism.
Yeah.
It's the same as I can't fuck my way into privilege, into
Right.
white privilege, just because my partner is a white woman. I can have white privilege adjacent.
Right. In proximity to.
There is some safety in that. If I'm pulled over in my white partner, either it looks like I'm kidnapping her or that I am a safe person to be around because I have a white partner. It's
Oh, my
50-50.
word.
Either way. And this is real. Like, I'm not saying this stuff just to be funny.
When your partner legitimizes your humanity.
Yes.
When your partner comes in and can actually navigate and be a part of, your life and your livelihood. It's amazing, like, what happens when, we are perceived on our own by, different spaces. And then you bring in like your white girlfriend or your white husband or whomever. Yeah. And it's like, oh, now you're worth, okay. Like, oh, now you're worth something.
I think people are just starting to talk about the struggles of interracial relationships and marriages. Especially you talk about having to raise your sons, your children, and your daughter.
My daughter. She's 21. She's like, bye.
Yeah, she's raised.
I'm out. I'm out.
But raising Black men.
Yes.
Black boys into Black men who are half white with a white father who doesn't understand that he is raising Black men.
Right. And that he is, problematic in his, it's like, yes, getting him to understand the depth of really the responsibility, a really beautiful, sacred responsibility of how he is supposed to show up for these kids.
He's going to have to have the talk about when they get pulled over by police.
Well, he's, and that's the reality. That is kind of like the point of when white people date Black and brown folks. It is so reckless and harmful when you are not on your shit. I see a lot of like these families who have stepped in to raise Black children, who are living in isolated rural areas where there is no reflection of who they are. There is no support. There is no celebration.
Really
and these people, it messes you up so much because it's always in the unspoken and the spoken, the actual verbal. There are so many children who talk about what they heard, their family. My own daughter is processing the fact that when she went to spend time with her other family, that they were fucked up and she no longer wanted to go do things with them because they were so comfortable and complacent. And also because she was biracial, they didn't count her as that bad. They were like, oh, well,
so
good thing.
She still has whiteness in her.
Right. And meanwhile, she's like, Mom, I'm a Black woman. Like, I am Black. Like, I am raised by a Black woman, and therefore this is who I am.
Your daughter will always be seen as the other.
But absolutely.
Even though she's light-skinned, beautiful young woman.
Yeah.
But she will always be seen not white.
Right. And so she has to know who she is. And then, you can be fetishized and you're all these things that are like, oh, good, so the harm that happens with well-meaning. Oh my word. So the harm that happens with well-meaning white people who are not doing any work. Okay, there's that harm. And then we have people that are raising children that are actually going like to adopt, or they're raising their grandbabies, that whatever the situation is. And there's that underlying like almost like treatment. It's like to be raised by your colonizer, to be raised by the same person.
Well, you're just reliving.
Right. Who makes you feel indebted.
Basically plantation days.
And so it's just a really
when your slave owner impregnates you.
Get raped and create this culture of, and that's a whole different thing. But the point is like, it is harmful. It comes down to, if you are going to have relationships, intimacy, if you are going to be in community and communion with Black and brown people and you are not doing your work, then stay away because you are harmful.
If you want to love us.
If you want to love and be in relationships and you want to date and to be, available, and you want this really beautiful cultural experience, because I noticed that white people get a lot from dating other cultures, a lot. And I always think, what's the other part? Like, what do we get out of it? What do we get? They're getting a lot. They feel validated. They love being, treated a certain way. They love, being able to experience all these things. Meanwhile, it's like, well, I don't get the same treatment when I come around your people.
I don't want to like be mean or rude or calling anybody out. But since we're talking about being on the dating apps, and I have to. Not that I have to, but when I'm messaging back and forth with women, and like, what do we talk about? They talk about, sometimes they bring up culture, right? Because I am Filipino.
And do they get that right at first?
No, they never.
No.
So they don't ask. They don't ask, what are you, or whatever,
right?
Like that.
Just an assumption.
Obviously, I'm not white, so they know I'm not.
Well, like just like
else.
an assumption of like an Asian.
Yeah.
Just general.
So they kind of ask questions about like, oh, I really love learning different cultures, or I really love to travel, and yes,
this is my favorite. Okay. Korean restaurant to go to.
I've had that. I really love Thai food, or sushi.
Or when I studied for a semester.
It's interesting the subtext, right? Like the subterfuge of navigate, like white women trying to navigate,
trying to make a connection.
Yeah, trying to make a connection with me and trying to navigate dating somebody of color. And I know that I don't think they think about dating people outside of their race as much as like we do.
Right.
I think what they see us, they're attracted. They're also attracted to the fact that we are different cultures, and that would be cool to learn about somebody else's culture. And my culture is very cool, and I love it. And I would love to teach people about my culture. And I love teaching people about my culture. And I would love my partner to learn more about my culture if they are not from my culture. So, but that interesting dance of them trying to make a connection with me based on cultural differences, which I think is always sweet. There's some sweetness around that.
There's some sweetness. Yeah.
It can be endearing. At the same time, it's like, let's just be real with each other.
Yeah, just ask me.
Just ask, not necessarily where are you from. Just ask me, what's your ethnic origin?
Right. Or your cultural identity. Like, what are some ways to ask?
Cultural identity.
Yeah. A couple ways.
You look like you could be of Asian descent. Are you?
And then I'm like, perhaps you are of Irish or Scottish. I ask too. Mm-hmm. I do. I want to know.
Or you can say, I just want to let me know if this is offensive to you if I ask, like, what is your nationality?
Right.
Or because I'm really interested in your background, in your cultural background. There is nothing wrong with being interested in people's cultural background. But there is a good way, a respectful way to ask people where they're from without asking them where they're from. Because I am from here, from Rochester, Minnesota. I grew up in California. I was born in the Philippines. Just because I was born in the Philippines doesn't mean that I could automatically be Filipino, because I have had friends who are Chinese, ethnically Chinese, who were born in Argentina.
Right. And Trinidad, Chinese people are amazing. where you find Chinese people. Yes. Like, I love
it. We just be mindful that people, when you ask where somebody was born in, that's what you're asking. What country were you born? So I could have been born in Mexico, but I'm still Filipino, like ethnically Filipino, because my mom and dad are both ethnically Filipino. I am indigenous to the Philippines.
Right.
So, if you were wondering,
Now we know.
That's
There
what
you
my
go.
DNA says.
We all up in there.
But there is a responsibility. If you're a white person, a white woman coming in to date us, and somebody who's already dating you, you have to know that there are struggles that we have lived through, we continue to live through, and we will into the future live through struggles when it comes to our racial identity and also our queerness. That sometimes white queer women who are passing, who don't look queer, don't have to deal with. Like, so me also, I'm masculine presenting. So there's another layer of intersectionality that I also live within my body that I have to be okay with and be authentic about and just take up space in, because that's what I feel comfortable in. If I pretended to be more femme, that is not who I am, and it would not feel honest and authentic to me. So this is the way I present, and this is what feels right for me. Because when I was growing up, I was all femme, like long hair, the whole bit.
Right.
Yeah. And when I would dress up and put on makeup, I did not. I felt like I really did feel like I looked like a drag queen.
You really felt that way? I'm sure you
However,
were.
I probably didn't look like that.
No.
I probably didn't look like that. I looked like probably a beautiful woman.
Yeah. Just didn't feel natural
It
to
just
you.
did not feel natural. So it felt like I was putting on a costume.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. One thing I want to say that I love about my relationship with my girlfriend is that we have really difficult discussions. And because we've gotten to a space of racial transparency, cultural transparency, being able to speak about very specific things and process and have these conversations, is that she understands that it is necessary for me to have the recognition of Black spirituality, support, connection, solidarity, culture, and that she is so supportive in making sure that and being a part of, or at least, just being supportive and understanding that, to where she doesn't feel like she's being left out. There's no manipulation or refocusing about her and just like, what about me? How come? She understands that she can't always go where I go. And that's all right. There's nothing that she's
going to the spaces that we go into.
Absolutely not. And there's a respect for that. There's a respect, a healthy respect and knowledge of that, to where it does not make her the center of my journey as a Black woman, queer woman. And that's another problem that happens in relationships, where when you're with a person who's not doing the work or self-aware, it will always become about them. In your liberation, when you pursue your liberation or your support or your solidarity, it's going to be about them if they don't understand that or want to practice that.
I am trying to practice decolonizing love. So,
oh my word, yeah,
decolonizing relationships.
That is so good. I love that. And you're right. I'm sorry. I don't mean to, but that is such a good, because I see it in a lot of interracial relationships where things get centered on the white partner.
Yep. Well, also that we as Black and brown people do not feel comfortable to ask for love, to ask for what we need in a relationship. And if it is space, if it is affection, if it is certain respect, whatever our love language may be, I think it's important for us to be able to have those hard conversations in the moment instead of putting them off. Because sometimes I've been in situations where, like, we need to have this hard conversation. No, I don't really feel like it right now, Vangie. Maybe we can talk about it later. And then later happens, and then later continues to happen, and so the conversation never happens, and so we're just brushing it under the rug, and then resentment builds, and it is better to just have that uncomfortable conversation for that moment, 2 hours. You may or may not have resolution. However, it's over. So you don't have weeks and weeks of resentment building up when you're not having not having whatever talk it is that you need to have.
Especially if it is based in racism,
Mm-hmm.
if it is based in the behavior or a lack of understanding or support, in racism, like even recognizing that if you go out and realizing that, your partner's being acknowledged before you every single time, like to the point where like, you may even pay for something and that card is going to be handed to her.
I really don't. I don't have that. That's not what happens. The card is always handed to me.
Well, yeah, because but just like, in
the check is always handed to me.
Right. But just in that space of like
no.
problematic shit, being able to say like, babe, it's hard to go out and do things because you're always treated, your worth shows up in a lot of ways, and that's really difficult to be treated a certain way, over and over again when I'm out, or even people just like, oh, and that's their own status. Like, it's so interesting, and she is, brilliant and beautiful and all these really great things. And it's really interesting though, when I've heard the passive aggressiveness from a white man. Let me tell you about a white man who sees that whole scenario, right? White men get pissed. They get pissed, and then they're trying to wrap their mind around like, oh yeah, okay,
so you're this beautiful white woman,
and you're this attractive, mass presenting.
Why are you with them?
Oh, there must be something wrong with you, or there must be, it's like,
it's like maybe you couldn't find a real man.
Right. So to deal with that, you have to have a different type of resiliency.
Is so freaking toxic.
It's so toxic. And you have to have a different type of resiliency.
There is some weirdness that happens. I mean, I have lots of dude friends, straight dude friends, and they're all good men, but toxic masculinity can be very prevalent in certain situations, right?
Absolutely.
Of course, if I'm in a space with men, they're not going to be complete assholes. Like, they do sometimes talk. If they feel comfortable, they do talk about women,
right?
in not so flattering ways.
Exactly.
Knowing that I am gay and I'm mass presenting. So they think they can do that, which is fine. Like, if that's how they feel that they can connect with me. But it also gives me an insight of that when you say not all men, yes, all men do objectify women.
Oh, man.
But moving forward in closing, when we talk about dating and the deeper dive of dating white women, liberal white women, is where
liberal.
It has brought me back, because there has been an opportunity to date somebody who's not a liberal white woman, and that's always weird. It's really difficult, because when you're really fighting with someone who doesn't believe that they're racist.
Yeah, right. It's like, do I take the Republican who understands that, like, there's a very specific code that you have to fall under to be the Republican, or to be, but then when you have like a liberal, they think they do all the right things. Mm-hmm. They think they do all the right things.
So all of it is really interesting, but the idea of decolonizing love, and it goes for everyone, and not just Black and brown people, but white people should also want to decolonize love, because I think there's an opportunity to go deeper, to find deeper ways of connecting with people, and also being able to ask for what you want. Feel the liberation of love, right? Mm-hmm. We are trying to liberate ourselves as people in society, but when it comes to the idea of love and loving people, it should feel freeing to love someone, not oppressive or suffocating. So love should feel liberating. It should feel like expansive.
Right. The ability to give voice to some of the deepest, or just even to be able to process and to talk about such things, to be able to process and go into those deep spaces and give voice to that is a really good, reflection of really your intimacy lies,
Because what happens, and sorry to interrupt,
no, it's good.
What I think happens is that when people fear they're losing a person, like that the love is starting to fade, people cling and people become suffocating and people do really nasty, violent things. And that's what I want us to move away from is not having these abusive relationships where people feel that this is what it is. This is it. This is all I get. And because that's what they thought love was, is this, suffocating, all encompassing, like you're my everything and I'm your everything. And that is not how love should be.
No, absolutely not. I think establishing foundation is really important, but being able to knowing how to let go appropriately and not being forced to do so, moving on, I think would save so many lives.
Right.
So many spirits, so many, and doing the work,
especially
and when Black women, and when
there's so many Black Indigenous women who are, missing and murdered,
and it's by the colonizer. A lot of the crime is the fetishizing, but then the hatred underneath.
Yeah, the sexualization
the hatred
of Black and Indigenous women is just as disposable,
and the hatred, and they can be in same space. I think that's the hardest. They are
the desire, both the desire and hate,
and the hate
for someone,
for
desiring someone who is Black or Indigenous, but at the same time hating who they are,
and then reminding them in abusive ways of their place.
Right.
And there's a lot of cases. There is a famous one. And I know we're kind of getting off, but this is a part of it.
This is the idea of decolonizing.
This man, this sports figure, was dating this Black, woman, and he's a known sports person, and they were dating, and he ended up, he would say derogatory things. He ended up beating her up. It's like, what do you do? And this is going to tie back in. What do you do when you unconsciously are looking for the validation of the colonizer? When in that very same space, you are spiritually dying. Some are physically dying. Your mental health is suffering, your emotional health, because you are trying to gain acceptance and validation from a space that all in the same breath can lay down and be intimate with you and then take you out.
Yep.
All in the same space. And it's like that need to be validated.
I super echo what Annie is saying, that Black and brown people who date white folks and continue to stay in toxic relationships with white people because needing that validation, needing that
like, I'm going to make you love me. I'm going to be different. And you know what? I know how you feel about me. I know how you feel about my people. I know but I'm going to be different. Right. And the liberation that needs to take place in those spaces, it is so incredibly harmful. And I've seen it. I've experienced it myself to a certain extent.
But the stories too, like the Pocahontas and John Smith and Pocahontas Disney version of it. The white dude coming in and saving. No,
no,
no, thank you. That is not what happened at all.
And if you can't fully be yourself, here's another thing. If you are a Black and brown person and you feel like you have to include your partner or your wife or in everything that you do, even to the point of having conversations with other individuals from your culture, even to the point of if you feel that if you feel guilty or that something's happening, you are being emotionally manipulated. You are being emotionally held in this space to where you have no autonomy, and it does not, speak to you. It is a controlling thing. And once again, the whole like love sees no color and everyone's the same and all this other stuff is just such propaganda. And it's just, incredibly harmful. But that's another thing I've seen in certain relationships where there's a fear or even a guilt. And I've experienced this of not including, or feeling the need to like make that a priority,
Yeah, I think to close.
Yes, to close.
Finally. Is it, if a person who is not of color, a white person wants to date people of color, there's a responsibility in that. And that you need to go in with your eyes wide open and with the best. When you think about your intentions need to be very mindful when you're going in and dating somebody who is not part of your culture, just in general.
What are your intentions? Yeah.
What are your intentions?
Absolutely.
And love, wonderful, wonderful thing. The idea that love conquers all, not true. Love can do a lot of things, but also loving someone and knowing that they are not right for you is also a real thing too.
Right.
Because you can still love someone and love yourself more.
Right. Especially if it's harmful all the time.
Yep. So, Annie Mac, you got anything you want to say to close?
And on that high note, I know it's just, thank you so much for joining us and allowing us to process in real time. It's a lot. It's a lot to go.
Well, we want to make this space
into those spaces
safe and authentic for BIPOC folks to know that we're having these conversations. If you've been thinking about them and you haven't had an opportunity to have these conversations with people, we're here for you. And with that, I'm Vangie Castro.
Right. And I'm Annie Mac.
And we are
2POC2QUEERS. See you soon.
On the flip side.
For quite some time, felt it in my spirit, and I saw the signs. I had